We are live. LinkedIn and YouTube. Hello. I don't think I have anybody here listening on YouTube just yet, but LinkedIn, I'm expecting people here. If you are here already, get in the comments, begin saying hello. Josh, I haven't mentioned this beforehand. On the right-hand side, you'll see a box which says comments. If you keep that one open, this is where you'll see people coming in saying hello from the people you've invited. That we've invited, so keep an eye out on that. Where else? That's the key thing you need to know. But yeah, if you are here already, fantastic. If you're not here, I make this joke every single time. If you're not here, then where are you? That's a terrible joke for people who aren't here.
I love
it. Dad jokes. I'm not even dad. I'm making dad jokes. Yeah. If you are here, please say hello. Tell us where you're from, who you are, and where you're from. And please get involved, right? I've got a bunch of questions which I want to ask Josh. It's going to be about 45 to 55 minutes long. And so, yeah, if you want to add some insights or some questions, please do. I always feel that the questions are always better from your side of the screen because you're the one going through the challenges, whereas I'm just trying to find knowledge. So if you feel like you want to add value and want to ask a question or you want to get some questions answered by Josh, get involved. Where are we? How long have we been? Nearly 90 seconds. I've nearly done my spiel or my kind of rambling anyway. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you, mate. Feeling good. Excited for this. Great to be here.
I can't remember if you said this was your first podcast. I don't think it is it?
No, I've done a few now over the last year or so.
Yeah, brilliant.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
Nearly.
But enjoying them.
Nearly. Yeah, mate. Look, it's lovely to have you hear me and talk about nutrition. And I think we put a men's lens on this, right? And looking at the male nutrition. But I think a lot of these lessons will be relevant for both genders. But I could be very wrong there because I haven't got a clue what you're going to say and how you're going to say it. But from what I know about nutrition, a lot of that can be relevant for both. It's just slightly with some tweaks, right, to how and when and what, etc. So, yeah, please get involved. And if you want to, as I said, ask any questions. But I'm excited because being a performance person, caring about my own fitness, health, and performance, I'm excited to see what lessons I take away from this as well. So, look, I'm going to shut up. Josh, over to you. Could you introduce yourself?
Of course. So my name is Josh. I am a registered nutritionist by training. I started off my career with a degree in medical physiology from the University of Manchester. I then went on to do a master's in human nutrition at the University of Sheffield. And that really got me interested in behavior change and lifestyle change. I then became a nutritionist and then senior nutritionist at a public funded weight management service provider called Busybodies at the time, then bought by Maximus, and that delivers UK-wide programs. And I was leading on a range of mixed adult weight management services and a men's only program as well. That really got me interested in the men's health space. Mm-hmm. When I was leading it at the time, it was the UK's largest digital weight management service for men. And that really showed me just how much potential there is to grow in this area and support men's health in this weight management and nutrition space. I then ended up setting up my own freelance business called the Men's Health Nutritionist, which I'm currently doing now. And I work with employers, charities, local authorities, universities, do some guest lecturing, do one-to-one coaching. I wear many hats at the moment, but all in the realm of helping men eat healthier and live a bit better.
Yeah, nice. When you were working in the digital weight management organization, what did you notice? What did you notice about nutrition?
It's interesting that in the UK, men are actually more likely to be or experience overweight and obesity compared to women. It's about 6 in 10 versus 7 in 10 for men. And so there's a lot of support that we need to provide to help men lose a bit of weight in a healthy and sustainable way. However, across the industry, whether it's Slimming World, Weight Watchers, the programs we are running at Maximus, it's about 85% attendance is women. And in fact, only what is it? 1 in 3, no, 1 in 20 of the 1.3 million people joining these services is a bloke. And so I noticed there's this huge gap here, this huge difference between the support that we need to provide for men and men engaging with these services. And actually, when I was delivering this men's only service, it was getting great results, great engagement, really effective. And I saw a few other programs around the UK doing something similar, more than face-to-face, like a Shape Up program in Hertfordshire, the Man v Fat program, which is UK-wide, loads of other great men's weight management services. But still, there was only, there's a huge opportunity for more men to get involved with them. And they're still very small scale. And so that kind of inspired this drive in me to make weight management services and healthy lifestyle services more accessible to men, essentially.
What's the biggest challenge you see with men's nutrition?
Yeah, I mean, people often ask me when, as a nutritionist specialized in men's health, they say, what's the difference between men's and women's nutrition, for example? And there are, of course, a few biological differences which we can talk about in terms of nutrient requirements dependent on our physiology. But I think what is most important to address in the context of nutrition and diet, and more broadly when it comes to health behaviors, is the psychosocial factors, the environmental factors, stigma, for example, that impact men's decisions. And often, for men and women, we know the good advice to follow, but the certain barriers stand in the way of us being able to follow that advice. And the key difference is how we address those barriers. That's what's different between men's and women's nutrition. So that's how we need to design and develop services or employee assistance programs or well-being services in organizations to address for those psychosocial factors. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So your environment, and when I think about this, you have your corporate man, your blue collar, you've also got your white collar, which is people on construction sites, and you can probably see, even in those environments, there's probably corporate's very beer of the eve, like probably less so now, but maybe social.
Yeah.
I think it's white collar, isn't it, where you're in the construction.
Yeah.
But they obviously going to be.
So blue collar will still be in construction.
Okay. So yeah,
so white collar will be behind a desk in an office.
Yeah, that manual work would be more kind of fast foods, quick dining. There's still a heavy alcohol thing there. So yeah, it'd be interesting. Yeah. What do you see? Yeah, I'm going to shut up.
It's I suppose it's interesting because, again, being kind of man and viewing this through the lens of gender is only one factor that we need to take into account for when we're supporting people. There's obviously socio-economic factors, there's geographic factors, there's age-based factors, other influences that intersect to drive health outcomes, good or bad. And so gender is an important one. It's by no means the only one that we need to take into account, but it is very much an important one that we should address. And so men generally tend to engage less with healthcare services. They tend to be less likely to seek proactive, preventative healthcare support, whether it's physical or mental health. And so, yes, the advice actually can be quite similar, but men may have a lower nutrition or health literacy, or they may have social stigma or experience that social judgment, which prevents them from accessing that service or following that good advice. And so we need to account for that. And then within that, make sure that we're accounting for the specific roles they're in. So Mark Brooks, who helped write the men's health strategy, talked about how we need to focus on supporting Barry on the bricks, Tim in the truck, and Ollie in the office. It's about understanding men overall, but also the specific challenges that different men face.
I've had Mark Brooks on this podcast. I don't know if you knew that or not.
No, I didn't. Fantastic.
Yeah. I think when you're talking about men's health strategy, I was like, I think I know. Yeah. So it was Mark, the same Mark. Okay. So understanding those different needs. I really want to get back to this, and it might be different. And this is where you might need to explain it for me. The actual challenges you're seeing around men's nutrition, and
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that probably does change for the environments or the social spaces they're in.
Yeah. A great example of this, for example, it is lorry drivers in the UK. Over 90% of them are blokes. And so it's a great case study to look at how the food decisions that these guys make is influenced by their social norms, their work environment. And it is essentially a perfect storm of unhealthy environments. So they're exposed to unhealthy foods, ultra-processed foods at service stations. That's where they get a lot of their food from. They are sat down all day. They're socially isolated. It's a bit of a side tangent. It's really interesting. The risk of suicide, of course, is higher in men, but it's even higher in occupations like lorry driving, for example, where it's about 30% above or 20% above the national average. And it's the perfect storm of poor kind of exposures and unhealthy behaviors. And so the challenges we're seeing around nutrition are going to be lots of ultra-processed food, not much fruit and veg, not enough fiber, probably too much alcohol as well. But the solutions aren't just to provide more education or information. A lot of guys know they should be eating healthier. No matter what occupation they're in, often we know we should be eating healthier. It's whether we care. And it's then how do we actually address that when we do care? How do we start to go about it? And a big issue in men's nutrition is familiarity with cooking or cooking confidence and kitchen skills. Often guys can go who tend to not be the primary cook of the household or the person in charge of planning food, and therefore the solutions that we would give them versus their partner who's doing the cooking, for example, might be a bit different. We're focusing more on how you eat healthy outside the home and how you can get more involved with cooking inside the home, rather than just providing information or providing recipes. Yeah, portions, for example.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It's interesting. Yeah, 100%, right? I've obviously spent 12 years inside my personal training mind, right? For 7 years doing it kind of directly. And it's the same for, and I talk about this a lot, it's the same for mental health and burnout and those challenges that for a lot of us, a lot of people don't act until something happens. And so how do we get people to care, right? And this is this care and this, okay, well, people don't make change until they've had a heart attack or they've had a stroke. So how do we get our men in our world to care about the importance of eating? Because eating well doesn't mean not having good food.
Yeah, and exactly. And I think something important to clarify as well is, as a nutritionist, I know that the most effective diet to follow is the one that works for you, that is sustainable, that's got a good balance of everything you need. And that's not perfect. I enjoy my donuts and pizza from time to time, but I know on the whole, I've got a good balance. And I think that's what we need to focus on and help people achieve that sustainably. And often what guys tend to do is we like to lock in, we like to go all in. We're going to go on a full keto diet, or we're going to go carnivore, or we're going to go vegan. And we like to go into these extremes because we want to go all in. If we know we want big results, we feel we need to make big changes. And of course, actually the opposite is true. And it's helping kind of men, one, switch on to the fact they need to pay attention to their nutrition, and then two, do that in a smart and effective way that they can learn what works for them.
Why do you think it is? Because I completely agree with you. Men, for some reason, do lock in. And I've seen this countless times, right? When you see, I've worked with both male and female. Females struggle to lock in, whatever that term means, right? And just being able to stick to a diet for a long period of time. I'm not saying they don't, but men are way more restrictive. Like we're on a diet. I'm not going to be drinking. I'm not going to be doing this. Calories are down at sometimes ridiculous levels. But they struggle, or they can do that, but then don't sustain it, and so this yo-yo happens. What do you think? Why do you think that is from a psychological standpoint?
I've been thinking a lot about this, to be honest, and I think there's this unhealthy obsession with discipline, or a misunderstanding of what discipline actually means, and we feel that by locking in, getting on the grind, having that grind set, going to the gym 5 a.m. every day, cutting out carbs, we feel that we are ticking this box of being disciplined. We are looking for this sense of control that we may not have in other areas of lives. So, for example, if someone has had a recent health scare or they're struggling with a work, they may feel that loss of sense of control. And one thing they can control is their own behavior, and therefore there's a tendency to want to control everything, control your calories, control your time you're getting up, and it's all in this drive to find achieve control over this and achieve this discipline. But I always want to challenge that notion, because discipline isn't getting up at 5 a.m, cutting out all the foods you enjoy, cutting out alcohol. Discipline is doing the right thing for you, and sometimes that means giving yourself the time and space to have a lie-in, to enjoy food, to prioritize other things that aren't directly nutrition focused. And it's about having that balance. And I think we often too much lock into this idea of discipline, the conventional definition discipline, rather than actually what discipline is in terms of doing the right thing. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I also think it's this element of competition. I can be a little bit of that locking type character. And what I mean by it is, especially in January, I always do a 3-day fast to start with. And this element with myself of competition. Can I get through 3 days without doing it? Can I get through the month without having sugar? And so this element of like, I'm not doing this stuff. And so when I talk about it, it's like, look at me, it's a competition. It's a little bit of that. And it'd be interesting to see how much of that goes in.
I think as well, often what it is that we're locking in, there's two things. There is the physiological impact of what we're doing. So whether it's a fast, cutting down carbs, cold showers, for example, getting up early, there is the cutting out alcohol. There's the logic of the health benefit that we are likely going to be getting. But I think the bigger benefit and the more important thing is the psychological vote of confidence that we give ourselves. If we say we're going to do something and we do it, that feels great. And that builds confidence, that builds momentum, and that spreads into our other areas of life. So there's two benefits. There's the psychological benefit and the physiological benefit. And I think for me, I love a cold shower, maybe because it might be helping with my physiology a little bit, but actually that's not enough to really make a difference. It's because for me personally, feel it gives me that sense of I've done a difficult thing this morning, ready to go, or whatever the action is. It's the psychological benefit of the momentum and the confidence that gives us. That's how I describe it.
Yeah, no, I enjoy that. Where was I going to go? I had a really good question. I just lost it.
Always happens.
always happens. I feel sure it'll come back to me. Let me just recenter myself, figure out where I want to go next. I feel like the question was good. It's annoying me now. One of the things I see with men and that's it, is around this concept of the goals not being strong enough. And so when I think about it from a self standpoint, or from a client standpoint, is when I go to people and say, well, what do you want to achieve? It's just, I want to lose weight. And I think if they don't really believe that, or don't really care enough, the goal isn't hard enough or strong enough for them to make a difference. If they feel, and I will challenge my clients, I don't know what your thoughts are here. Sometimes I'll challenge my clients to the fact that, well, if that's the case, and you haven't done anything about your nutrition in a month, then do you actually care? Is your goal big enough? Is it actually something which is going to impact you? Because I feel like if you did care enough, then you would make some of those changes and maybe stop having the alcohol or overeating on the calories and having the snacks. And so I do think it's about this concept of having a goal which is big enough. So, example for me at the moment, I'm trying to be good and be disciplined in your term over a period of time for the World Cup I'm in, right? And so that's a big enough goal for me to try and stick to that nutrition plan. But just losing a bit of weight when maybe you're actually kind of happy with how we are, just want to be a little bit sexier, is that sometimes then hard to stick by those things because we let ourselves off.
Yeah, and I mean, I could talk about this all day, but what I'd specifically say to this is that you've got the, as you say, the identity piece. And it's always important as a coach to ask someone, why is it that you want that? What does that weight loss afford you? What does that allow you? And is it actually a sense of confidence that, or feeling comfortable or less stressed in your own body, or more confident in social situations. And so really understanding that can help clarify the why, and provide that identity shift that's necessary. I think the other angle to this is, if weight loss is the goal, for example, or even the confidence is the goal, and there's another approach we can take. But if weight loss is the goal, it's all well and good saying I want to lose weight, but that's like saying I want to earn more money, for example. It's a great goal to have, but it's pretty arbitrary. You have to then think of some specific plans of how I'm actually going to lose weight, and work backwards in terms of the behaviors you need to adopt and the opportunities you need to look for to earn more money. And weight loss is the same. If the goal is weight loss, then you need to look at how you're going to achieve that. Are you going to focus on reducing your alcohol? Are you going to focus on cooking more meals at home? Are you going to focus on cutting back on your snacking, for example? And then you have that as a goal to work towards, and almost forget the weight loss, because it's the sustainability and sustained consistency of those behaviors that lead to the weight loss. And then you have to ask, okay, if I'm trying to reduce my snacking, how do I make that happen? And you work back until you find the core underlying foundational behaviors that you need to focus on, and everything else doesn't matter because it follows from that. So, for example, for me, meal planning is really, really important. If I create a little plan for the week, even if it doesn't go perfectly, even if I don't stick to it, that time designated to plan my weekly meals and snacks and drinks, or even exercise, gives me that space to set some intentions, and that sets me the right tone for the week, and then I have a plan to follow. And or meal prepping, for example, then that sustains all those other behaviors, which leads to the consistency, which leads to the weight loss or the muscle gain, or whatever it is I'm working towards at the time. So it's understanding those foundational behaviors and tying it into the why underpinning it all.
Yeah, and I understand that, because I feel that within outside of nutrition things as well, right? For example, as business people, we have to do marketing without clarity over what we want to do. The marketing becomes hard. So without a plan and intentional actions, and this is not just marketing now, but everything. It's hard to do because we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, I think as well, I want to add to that. It's such a good point. And then why I think it's important to have some support when implementing that in terms of nutrition is that with the complex inconsistencies and misinformation online nowadays, it can be really difficult to make a plan in nutrition that is right. And it can be overcomplicated. And actually, the complexity can get in the way. And so I always want to say, make it super, super, super simple and straightforward. Pick one or two things that you know work for you, and really focus on prioritizing that. Whereas often we make so many changes overnight that, yes, it might make a difference, but because we've changed so much, it's unsustainable. And then we go back to our original behaviors. But because we didn't identify what the specific thing that was making the difference was, because we changed so much, then we end up not doing that, and we haven't learned from the experience. And so small intentional building blocks is much more important as a plan than doing everything all at once.
Yeah. One of my favorite sayings is, and I think it's relevant for not just this, but exercise from every level: keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I want to add to that as well, if I can. There's a quote that I remind myself on a very regular basis, and it's that we overestimate what we can do in a day, and underestimate what we can do in a year. And it's so easy to put a lot of pressure and expect high expectations on our daily output. And so we end the day not meeting those expectations, feeling behind, feeling frustrated, and then starting the next day on the back foot. Whereas actually, keeping it small, keep it simple, stupid, actually you can travel a lot further and actually faster. And over the year, you'll look back and will have done so much more.
Yeah. Small intentional actions, right? And simple actions. Keeping it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
I want to just move into the psychological part of nutrition, right? I've heard more and more around our gut being our second brain. Right. And I don't know what your thoughts are on this, and see, can you create an awareness and understanding for people, and then connect that to men as well?
Yeah, for sure. So we, in our digestive system, in our small and large intestine, our colon, we've got millions and millions of small little microbes, bacteria that eat or consume the fiber that we take in our diet. That's why fiber is really important. and a variety of fiber is really important to create a variety of microbes and a diverse microbiome. And that's really important because it uses that material to produce energy, to produce substances that our body uses and have health impacts. And there's a big connection between our gut and our brain. It's called the gut-brain axis. And there's a lot of communication going on between there all the time. And that's why there is such a strong link between what we eat and how we feel and our mood, for example. And so it's also interesting to know that obviously serotonin we associate as a feel-good hormone, and 95% serotonin is actually produced in the gut. And then that travels, and obviously we use that in our central nervous system in our brain. So there's a big connection there, and it's important to understand how we support that microbial diversity. And so off that, what are the outputs? What are the actions we need to take? And well, it's looking at what foods and drinks impact our gut microbiome. So yeah, like I said, getting plenty of fiber, a variety of fruit and veg, making sure that we're not having too much the high fat, sugar, salt food, the ultra processed food, the stuff we know we shouldn't be having loads of course. It's looking at alcohol, it's about staying hydrated. It's looking at certain fermented products as well. Kefir is a great example of something that offers a probiotic as well as yogurt that can support our microbiome, which again supports our immunity and other health outcomes that we want to pay attention to, our mood, our energy. Again, the nutrition in terms of how that applies to men, the advice is actually the same in the context of both men and women should be following that advice. But how I would support a man to do that might be different. So I'm not going to assume that a man has good, perhaps, cooking skills if he might not. A lot of the men I work with may have not cooked for themselves in 20, 30 years, and then unfortunately their wife dies, or they get widowed, and then suddenly they have to cook for themselves. And if we're trying to get them to eat more fruit and veg and plant proteins, like lentils, for example, me giving them lentil recipes is useless because they might not even know what a lentil is, let alone how to cook it or want to have it. And so it's about understanding their relationship and understanding about foods and behaviors. And of course, I'm talking in generalizations here. Some men feel very confident with cooking and very confident in the kitchen, but I don't want to assume that just in case they don't. See?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess listening to that and some of the key things which are going to support that from a man, and I guess I'm going to the construction site instinctually, and maybe we've got to think about the corporate space a little bit more as well. But kefir, lentils don't seem like foods that these guys are going to take or even consume. And so how do you overcome that challenge?
And so again, if that's the goal, we're trying to get a perfect diet according to what the data says. We're looking for 10 out of 10 consistent perfect diet. That's over here, Z. They're A. My goal is actually probably going to help them to B. Let's say eat breakfast and don't have the Greggs sausage roll, or have an apple, or don't have that third Monster energy drink for the day. That's the level of attention that I want to play to this, and providing education and motivation around that will build that momentum, that consistency, which will then help them follow a path to achieving that healthier diet overall. But we need to, again, understand the barriers to just going from A to B. What's in their food environment? Is it a money problem? Is it a lack of access? A great case study or example is when the London Olympics were being built in East London in 2012. There was a number of accidents and injuries on site, like a crazy high number. And the organizers basically came in and said, look, we need to do something. They brought in, I can't remember the company they worked with, but they basically offered free porridge, or it was like £1 for a bowl of porridge for everyone on site every morning. And simply having that breakfast dropped the number of accidents and injuries over the course of 6 months dramatically. So it became safer, they were more productive. And so it's about having clever, effective interventions that allow that easy behavior change. which may be around education, maybe around increasing access or reducing cost, to support that awareness of nutrition and motivation to change their behavior and take them on that pathway.
Yeah. I really like that piece of research. And my brain just went into, okay, so how do we get these guys doing that? And one of the things I always think about when I used to talk to guys is, especially guys, I think so more so than anybody else, is like, it's a partnership sometimes. So you're not just educating the man, you're educating the chef, right? So whoever is the chef, whoever is the person at home, and that might be the man, they might take ownership of all of it, but if maybe they don't. So how do you get the chef involved?
I think for some men, and a lot of men actually, food is just fuel. They don't enjoy it. There's no love for it. It's a chore. They have to eat because they have to eat for food. Mm-hmm. And so part of the approach, I think, should be inspiring a bit of enjoyment and joy out of food again, building a healthy relationship with food, understanding how it can bring people together, how it can make you feel great. Because often our experience with health and nutrition is restrictive, cut back. It's about weight loss. If I don't do it, I'm going to get told off. It's all very negative and discipline focused. And just bringing in a bit of joy to cooking again, or meal planning, or food prep can be really helpful, because then that reduces one of the barriers to that. But also I think generally just trying to frame it in a way where you're explaining the realities of nutrition and how that will impact your health and performance and your longevity and your disease risk, for example. So putting it through a health frame that can build that motivation, and then you can use that when they're motivated to say, okay, now's the time to have a conversation with your partner and say, look, how can I get involved more? How can I help influence some of the foods or recipes that we're cooking, the snacks that you're bringing in? And so you want to build that motivation first, but then look at the structural or social barriers or facilitators, the levers you can pull to sustain that motivation and behavior.
Yeah. So it's a multifaceted approach, right?
Absolutely. It's often in nutrition, people love to give simple answers, straightforward solutions, and it just doesn't work that way. There's so much nuance, and you need individual approaches and a holistic system of a suite of approaches you can take.
Yeah, but do you think that's partly the problem?
That's a good question. No, because currently how we're doing it, or especially with the online misinformation and attention grabbing content, simplistic instructions that lack nuance are doing more harm than good. And so yes, we don't want to overcomplicate things. And if I'm developing a service and a system, for the person experiencing that service, it's going to be as simple, straightforward as possible. But in terms of intervention design, or as a coach, if I'm designing service or delivery, I want to make sure I'm accounting for the range of behavioral barriers that person that I'm targeting may be experiencing, and address that. And so it's then becomes super simple and easy for the man to engage and stay on the program. So it's a balance between not overcomplicating it, but you must have that nuance. Yeah, that's how I would describe it. It's a good question.
Yeah. And there is so much noise out there, right? There's so much noise, which you must be frustrated at as a nutritionist. So I just want to take us into the work complex, or like the corporate space quickly. Yeah, sure. And talk about fatigue management, human readiness, emotional regulation, maybe, and see where nutrition has, what nutrition's role in that is, and then maybe some advice around how we actually manage this for a performance angle.
Absolutely. And I think nutrition behaviors on a day-to-day basis can have a massive impact on how you show up for work, on your energy, on your reactiveness, on your attention span, for example. So if you didn't have breakfast, for example, for whatever reason, or you're not having a breakfast that's going to sustain you through the morning, you might get a crash or lack energy in the morning. Then you get that cravings, and you react and grab something super quick for lunch, but then again, that doesn't fill you up, so you end up grazing or snacking in the afternoon. Or perhaps you didn't have breakfast and then at lunch your eyes are too big for your stomach, so you get something huge, and then when your body's digesting that, all your blood flows to your digestive system away from your brain. That's why you get that brain fog, that 3 p.m. slump that we've all experienced, where your eyes start to drift off. We could talk about the impact of alcohol on cognitive abilities the next day. We could talk about hydration and the impact of that on your attention, I suppose. And so there's different ways in which nutrition behaviors and habits impact your productivity and performance at work.
What do you think the biggest or the most important thing for us to talk about is? Or what the most important lesson for a man to take away from this in regards to nutrition and their working output?
So it's about providing a balance of education and behavioral support. So as an employer, if I want to support my employees or my men, if I've got quite a male-dominated environment, male-dominated team, how do I provide the education that is going to motivate those guys to switch on and go, yes, I need to do something about my health. I'm going to eat a breakfast. Okay. Then we provide the behavioral or structural support, which helps them do that. So providing porridge in the morning, or providing healthier options at lunch, providing not just a fruit bowl, because that's a bit of a tick box, but making the food environment at work a bit healthier, conducive to health. So removing the sweets bowl or putting it in the cupboard, for example. So you're building the motivation by providing that education, and you're making it easier for men to follow that advice. And there are some easy wins here in terms of making sure that lunch options are healthier, making sure that there is healthier breakfast provided in factories, in warehouses, on construction sites, for example, making sure that healthy drinks are available, so they don't have to go to the shop and get the Red Bull and Monster, for example. And so, yeah, focusing on building that motivation and providing some structural support.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. That's looking at it from an organisational standpoint. What about just a man being a man? What's the key lesson or key thing that he should focus on?
Again, good question. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to say it depends. What I would say is, if I ask any bloke that I'm working with or walking past on the street, not that I would, but if I'm meeting random men at conferences and they're asking me about what I do and they're asking for some support, I always ask for them to say, can you name 3 things that you know you should be doing right now to improve your health? Okay. And they can often name 3. They say, I probably need to go on my phone less, or I should be having breakfast, or I should be having less of the snacking in the evening. Okay. They can name those 3 things. And what I would say is those are the most important things for them right now. One, because they're experts in themselves. And the fact that they've come up with the idea means they have an ownership and agency over that. And so for me to say, oh no, you should cut out energy drinks, if they're not consuming energy drinks, it's not going to be relevant to them. Of course, there are general trends that pop up in terms of late evening snacking, that 9 to 10 p.m. danger zone in front of the TV. That's a low-hanging fruit to address. And so I could talk about that, and I could talk about other specific examples. But what I like to do is say, what do you think is right for you at the moment, and how can I support you to achieve that consistently?
It's a cop-out, but I'll let you off. Can I bring this real world, because it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
I have a very unique nutrition or diet. I'm going to use the word diet because I don't really care about the word diet, because I think it's just the way that you eat food over a period of time. I fast, so I won't eat until 11 or 12 o'clock every morning. But I play sport 3 to 4 times a week. Well, 3 times a week, and then obviously during the week, which are evening things. I don't eat dinner until 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Okay.
What advice would you give someone in that scenario?
So I would probably, first of all, look at the time in which you're eating, because digestion can have food can have a big impact on sleep quality, which obviously matters massively. And I would ask them, well, you, for example, do you find that eating that late at night does ever impact how quickly you fall asleep, the quality of your sleep, how you feel waking up? If you say no, then maybe it's not an issue. But if you say sometimes, yeah, it's impactful, because sleep is so foundational, I would look at how you can engineer your evening routine to eat a little bit earlier. For example, to leave a longer gap between when you stop eating and when you go to sleep. That would be where I'd focus on, based off what you said.
Yeah, and I understand that. And I'm normally a no for the most part. It's more adrenaline cooling down, which makes me struggle to sleep. I don't think even my quality of sleep doesn't get affected too much. But this is just me and you having a conversation, and you can't charge me as you know on my podcast. But like, I can't then just have, because if I eat at 6 o'clock, I'm going to be throwing that up at 7:30 when I'm running around the hockey pitch. So then there's a balance between how early you're eating and then what you eat afterwards.
So I would say moving your larger meal to earlier in the day, for example, at 1, 2 p.m. or your lunch or whatever it is, or eating, if your training starts at 6:30, not eating at 6, but eating at 5:30, and then having a small snack afterwards. So you're not coming back from your training and then not eating, because you want to replace the sugar, you want to replace that protein to support that recovery and support that sleep. But a big voluminous meal is going to be impacting your sleep. And so what I would suggest is a suite of options, and you try one, give it a go, run the experiment, see if it works, if it doesn't work, if it works, if it fits with your preferences, your biology. If it works, great. If it doesn't, try something else. So move in the bulk of the meal earlier, or at lunchtime, or just more than an hour before when you're training, for example. But equally, if there's not a massive problem in terms of your sleep, then maybe it's not the thing you need to focus on at the moment. And obviously you have you're probably good at someone who's a good example of eating quite healthy and has quite a balanced and consistent approach to diet. A lot of guys, there's a lot more easy low-hanging fruit because they're perhaps not into fitness as much.
Yeah, fair. It kind of makes sense, right? I've also been doing it for 20 years, so
exactly. And when people ask me, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm very hesitant to give a response, because I'm a nutritionist. I do ultra marathons. I'm trying to eat as much as possible to sustain that running, and it's very different context, different goals, and different level of experience. And so I'm hesitant to give what I eat in the day, for example.
Yeah, it is, because it just baffles people, doesn't it? When you go, well, yeah, I'm probably on 4,000, 5,000 calories, and you're like, and I can get away with eating that sugar because it's good for me, or
exactly
good for my sport anyway.
Yeah.
How does nutrition fit into like the broader picture of stress, confidence, work, and relationships?
Really, really interesting question. And I think, again, it comes back to this idea that we see nutrition, and the study of nutrition is often focused on the chemicals, the ingredients, the macro and micronutrients, and the impact that has on our physiology and even psychology in terms of the biological reactions. But there's a huge social and psychological part to food. And a lot of men have very unhealthy relationship with food, and it can provide a lot of stress, constantly having to think about what you're having, how much you should be eating, whether it's healthy or not. I know, because I've worked with a lot of men who experience this, it provides a lot of stress and takes up a lot of their daily cognitive bandwidth. And so I think there's this myth or this idea that men don't have a relationship with food, or it's just an unfamiliar concept to men. But of course we do. Food is more than just the nutrients. It's about identity. It's about stress management, stress eating. We've all heard of that before. We drink for confidence, for example, sometimes. And so it's about understanding what are the factors that influence our decisions around food, more than just the health implications, and identifying that and then addressing them. And so obviously food and nutrition and the stress of it can take up a lot of cognitive bandwidth. And so getting that clarity and simplicity can reduce that cognitive bandwidth, reduce stress, and create capacity for everything else. In terms of our weight and self-confidence. Obviously, nutrition has an impact on our weight status and muscle mass, so on and so forth. And we don't want to put our value onto our weight status and our fat mass, for example, but understanding that if we're taking care of our bodies through consistent healthy behaviors, we're going to feel and maybe look better, but we're going to feel better because of it and feel more confident. And so it's understanding the doors that healthy behaviors and healthy lifestyles open up for our confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And I think it's one of those things where it's hard to believe until you've done it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been working with a client lady who did from a professional standpoint, but just mentioned lost a bunch of weight and just mentioned how she feels so much more confident, so much more energy, and to be able to go into these spaces and it just shows up so much differently. Mm-hmm. Just because she's changed her lifestyle and nutrition, her exercise amounts, and just feels so much better about doing it. So actually, the impact can be great. And maybe just see it too.
Yeah, and it will be the fact that the biology of the food she's having and the exercise she's doing is having an impact on her weight loss and her physiological state. But also, like we said right at the beginning, the consistency that she's shown or that people show through going through that process of committing to something, sticking with it and seeing the results is very motivating, and that builds confidence. I always say confidence comes from the doing, and confidence is transferable as well. So when we feel good in one area, it leaks over into other areas. When we consistently go to bed on time or eat breakfast, that just gives us a little vote of confidence that then makes us show up a little bit more at work or in our relationships or in social situations. And so it's really important to lean into that, I think.
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions for you, Josh. And I'm going to start with this one. Yeah. This just kind of popped into my head. There's this argument, and I want to see where you stand for this. Calories versus health.
Okay, yeah.
Where do you stand and what's your thoughts?
Health is very multifaceted and complex. One area of that is weight, and one factor within that, of course, is calories. And so I think calories...
Okay. Sorry, let me reframe that question then, because health is, yes, broad. Healthy foods versus calories.
Okay, yeah. So basically, should we focus on calorie intake and the numbers versus focusing prioritizing healthy foods? Mm-hmm. It's important to have an awareness of the energy content of foods and the protein content of foods. Know which foods are high in protein, carbohydrate, fiber, and to have an awareness that certain foods are energy dense and less energy dense. And going through a process of counting calories, tracking your macros, for example, can be helpful for some people because it provides that awareness. Mm-hmm. And if that works for you and it doesn't become too overwhelming or it doesn't take precedent over the healthy foods, that's okay. But what can happen is it becomes overwhelming. They're tracking every number and every calorie, and it becomes a source of stress, and they're missing out on social situations, or it's taking up their cognitive bandwidth because they're so worried about the amount of protein that they're getting or the calorie content of foods. And actually, there's so much complexity in terms of how we measure calories, and humans are consistently underreport how many calories they're actually taking in. And the calorie content on foods is often, there's a range it can be. And so, yes, calories in and calories out, of course, is thermodynamically accurate, but our ability to track those numbers to perfection is where things go wrong. Of course, I'm sure you're aware of this. And therefore, putting so much focus on the numbers can be detrimental to our progress. And so it's important to have an awareness of energy content, of course, and the calorie content. Very true, but we shouldn't go too far in the other direction, or the other direction, whereby we're not paying any attention to the numbers, and we're purely based off, oh, this feels all right for me, this is healthy food, I'm going to focus on that. I think somewhere in the middle is probably best, and people can exist in different parts of that spectrum, but focusing on whole, healthy foods, good habits, and consistency of those healthy foods is really, really important as well.
Yeah. And because I'm obviously a personal trainer, so we sprout calories first, right? Because it's the base of all weight loss. But as a performance athlete or a performance professional, being at the correct weight is always going to be important, right? But managing energy is also vitally important, and a calorie deficit, you're never going to feel as energetic.
Yeah.
Right. Until you're at that position where you're at then the maintenance, right? So that's probably where the healthy food comes in to help provide some energy and that feel good and all that lot.
Yeah. I think one of the issues is counting calories can mean that you end up in this space where you're calculating and using it as an equation, and you're using exercise as a way to justify taking in more food, or you're punishing yourself with exercise because you overate on calories. And we need to separate them. It's not a one-to-one equation. Yes, we burn energy, which uses up calories through exercise, but it's so much more complex than that, because, for example, if you exercise intensely during the day, what your body does to compensate is reduce your other activity, your general walking. You might feel a bit lethargic, tired, and you sit on the sofa more. So actually your energy expenditure during the day is consistent. And so you can exercise to build muscle, to increase your basal metabolic rate, which can mean you're burning more calories each day. But generally, exercise isn't a good way to lose weight. Okay, it's about understanding your energy intake, and that's why it's important to know. But back to the point of the equation, I've heard people talk about, oh, I can afford a chocolate bar this evening, or I couldn't have the chocolate bar because I didn't do my steps today, and it creates this one-to-one calorie in, calorie out relationship that is very unhealthy, I think, in most people.
Two things, just more comments. I feel very kind of seen here in regards to, well, I played hockey, so I'm allowed that cake. I'm allowed that beer. And you must be a right slob, because I can imagine after your 20 miles for your ultra marathon, you must just sit there doing nothing for the rest of the day, if that's the case.
I think the bottom line is that it's about not using exercise as punishment and not beating yourself up if you've gone slightly above calories. Learn from it, what went wrong, and do a little bit better the next day, or take account for that in terms of your energy intake. What happens is when we beat ourselves up, we often hit what I like to call the what the hell effect, or the sod it syndrome, where we just go sod it, the days are right off, and then we end up going a lot further into kind of not helping ourselves out than we would have if we just accepted that was a bit of a mistake and crack on as usual. But we end up derailing the whole day.
Yeah, or even the whole week.
Let's start again Monday. Exactly.
Yeah, the Monday diet. I've worked with many people who like a Monday diet.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, I'm going to throw you two questions in one, right? Just conscious of time, because I know we've both got to be done. I know you work off the stages of change model. And so that's okay. Can you quickly introduce that, and then talk about how accountability connects to that as well?
For sure. So essentially, when it comes to any given behavior, people may be at a different stage of change. They may not be aware that that's an important change for them to make, what we call pre-contemplation. Maybe they're going, okay, I need to pay attention to this. Something's wrong. I need to focus on this a little bit. So they're contemplating it. That's the next stage. Then there is planning. Okay, I'm committed to do something, and now I'm going to plan how I'm going to do it. Then there's action when they're doing it. And then perhaps there's relapse, or kind of go into consistency and they carry on, or they relapse and have to start again, or start a new behavior, for example. At different stages of change, people need different support in terms of awareness and education up top, if they're not aware they need to make a change. Planning in terms of support with meal planning, structuring their day, engineering their routine. In action, this is where accountability can play a real part, because that takes a long period of time to build new habits and rewire our brains and break old habits. And so accountability, getting that social support, whatever it might be, or from a coach, can be really powerful in driving that consistent, sustained action.
Yeah. I knew you'd do that pretty well and pretty concisely. Thank you.
Glad.
Josh, it's been a pleasure. Look, as you could tell, we probably could continue this conversation for a while and just dive into this loads. They would then just become a consultancy because I'd be all just asked loads of questions about me. I've really enjoyed this, mate. Thank you so much for sharing. Where can people find you if they're listening on repeat?
I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn at the moment. I work a lot in employee wellbeing, the space, and so I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram at the Men's Health Nutritionist. I've got a website as well, and yeah, would be happy to chat with anyone if they want to reach out.
Fantastic, mate. Look, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining, and I will keep in contact with Josh. Josh, stay where you are. Everybody else, have a fantastic finish the week and fantastic Easter, and we will see you in a couple of weeks' time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.